Hey guys, T-Bull here. Today we're going to be talking aircraft carriers for you. I got Hyde on the screen here. I got a game in the Scharnhorst. This is going to be a brawling, pretty good action-packed Scharnhorst game. Hopefully you'll enjoy that in the background. We're going to start off flashing a little bit of news. Someone asked, I believe, on the official Discord, what's the scoop with CVs? What do you guys think? Sailing Robin, one of the wargaming community managers for Legends, chimes in. We're going to see either at the end of this year or the first quarter next year some news on carriers. So on its face, it doesn't sound like that juicy of a nugget. But if we combine that with what we already know, we're going to start to get a little bit of a picture forming in our minds. So what do we already know? Well, most of the information that I know is based on an interview that Tikana, the head community manager for Wargaming's World of Warships Legends division, he sat down with the main programmer of this game over the summer. This was 3-4 months ago. Asked him pretty much about everything that you guys are bugging him about nonstop. And the developer basically answered all the questions, which kind of blew my mind. He was quite open about it. But in terms of CVs, first off, he confirmed that they would be in the game. He also said that they're just either, at the conceptual level at that point in time, or they were just getting the ball rolling. So they were basically starting from scratch at that point in time. Again, this was earlier in the summer. And then the follow-up information he gave was that once the assets have been developed for the game, there's going to be at least one test event, potentially 2 test events, then the full introduction of the carriers into the game. What does that mean? Those of you that were around at the end of last year, 2019, for the Yamato test event, this is prior to the introduction of the legendary tier ships, of course, which if you're watching this video relatively at the time of the publishing, legendary tier is still more or less brand new at this point in time. But we had about a 6-month gap where we were testing the concept of the legendary tier ships, the Yamato in particular. That lasted for a full update cycle, so 5 weeks. They basically, I can't remember if you automatically got the ship or you had to play something relatively easy. It was easy to get, and then each day you could play 1 or 2 games in the ship. They collected the data on it, processed the data. The event ended. The event was fine to begin with, but there was a lot of complaints, and then they just kind of sabotaged Tier 7 for the remainder of that update cycle. Those of you that were around then probably remember what I am talking about. Those of you that weren't around, just consider yourselves lucky because it was rather frustrating. But basically, they took all the data, and then there was about a 6-month gap from when the test ended to when they were fully implemented. So getting back to what we learned yesterday, where Robin's basically saying end of this year, early next year, that's kind of when we'll start talking about carriers in earnest. That's when we're going to get some news dropping. For me, in general, usually when we get news dropping on World of Warships Legends, it's the week prior to the actual update happening. So stay tuned for the patch notes videos. That's kind of when that information comes out on my channel. We cover all that stuff. But I expect like a week before the first carrier test event actually begins, they're going to come in like a whirlwind and drop that news on us saying, strap yourselves in, carriers are here. They'll probably have, let's say, one Tier 4, Tier 6, Tier 7, whatever it is, American carrier, maybe one same tier Japanese carrier, and then it'll probably really gum up matchmaking for a while because everybody under the sun will want to play it. They'll limit you to 1 or 2 games per day just in an effort to not completely destroy the matchmaking, but people will complain because they're going to be bored with the test, and then they inevitably will tweak it and, in fact, destroy the matchmaking for the remainder of that update cycle. Hopefully it doesn't destroy the game permanently, the introduction of carriers. Some players believe it will. Other players think carriers are desperately needed to counter some of the problems that we have out there on the high seas. So Opinions are mixed on the desirability of carriers, that's for sure. Some people, that's all they think about, that's all they ask about, that's all they write about. And other people basically have said they're going to quit the game the minute that the carriers are introduced. So how they actually come into the game, how they perform, how they impact the game, both in terms of fun and strategy and other attractive features, that has yet to be seen. We have no idea. So let's kind of break this down then. Let's say they come in. Well, we got an update dropping in about 2 weeks, right? So first week in October, and then 5 weeks later we'll be in mid-November, and then basically at the end of the year, like the week before the end of the year, that'll be potentially another update cycle. They like to do them every 5 weeks, so that's what we're going on. I could see that. That's basically 2.5 update cycles because we're in the middle of this Italian cruiser early access / the Roma, and then God knows what's coming next. But let's just say we drop them, the test event starts at like the last week of December. That'll be 5 weeks for the test to proceed, and then let's just assume that they're satisfied with the data. They're looking at the data and they say, all right, how we got these things programmed currently looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and put these suckers in the game. Then I would expect probably summertime we'd actually see, a quote-unquote full implementation of the carriers into the game. If it's a disaster and they look at the data and they're like, holy smokes, what did we do? Back to the drawing board, we got to completely redo this. Then, maybe it's another 3 months, maybe at the end of the year, next year, 2021, then we would get the next test cycle, and then they'd be implemented the following summer. So you can, basically what I'm imagining is under the best circumstances where they get it right, or in their minds they get it right, right out of the gate, then we're probably looking at, again, the test event. Robin was very clear, the news will be coming end of this year, early next year. But if the news works how the news usually works with this game, shortly thereafter, we should see the test event. And then after that, 4 to 6 months. So that's my read on the timing of the situation. You guys let me know if you think I'm on the mark or you got a different take of the situation. But based on what we know in terms of how the last test event that we had, how that one worked, and then now Robin coming in with him telling us basically the earliest that we're going to be getting the ball rolling on that cycle, those are my predictions. As for what carriers actually are in this game, I've never played the PC version of this game. I've watched some carrier play in anticipation. Once they announced that they are coming for this game, I figured, all right, I better start at least becoming familiar with how they operate so I can have a semi-educated opinion instead of just relying purely on PC players' opinions that I've listened to. Basically, how these things work are their ships. You steer them by pulling up the map, clicking on where you want them to go. Then the computer sails them in that direction, and then you just continuously launch planes. There's like bomber squadrons, there's torpedo squadrons, rocket squadrons. I think they're introducing at least one other category now. There's probably other categories I don't know about, but you select which squadron you want to launch next, and then you launch the planes, and then I think you tell the ship what you want to prepare for the next launch cycle as you're flying around. And then they kind of operate like normal planes, but visually you see 5 or 6 planes on the screen, and then the players clearly controlling how they move with the keyboard and mouse. Essentially the joystick or the pair of joysticks on our controller is how you'll be controlling them. But these things are hellraisers when it comes to spotting. They can basically spot wherever they want on the map. There's some tactics when it comes to aircraft carriers where the players aren't even trying to necessarily damage the enemy ships, or that's not their main function. They're mainly trying to spot the enemy team. So it's kind of going to supplant the destroyers as the main spotters on the team. it also is going to wreak havoc on the destroyers, because the good carrier players, especially in domination mode when destroyers are so key to capturing objectives, they're going to hunt the enemy destroyers down, kill them, remove their ability to capture. Meanwhile, the bad carrier players will closely resemble the bad destroyer players that we currently have. They'll find battleships and they'll find the worst one in terms of how they're moving, and they'll just try and bomb them repeatedly. And usually attacking the worst player on the enemy team until they're gone is kind of a misallocation of resources. So carriers, I expect them to be by far the most important piece. Whether or not they're any fun to play, we'll find out. But I think good carrier players on your team will up your win rate for that game, your win chances by 10, 20, 30%. Bad players will pull it down in the opposite direction. That's what I expect anyways. We'll see how it implements, but that's what we know so far. If you guys know more than I know, or I left something out, leave it in the comments, because I kind of want to get as much info out there on carriers as possible here. Thumbs up if you like the video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Questions, comments, leave them below, and we'll see you later. Peace!